Welcome, everyone. I know there are folks that can't be here tonight and plan on viewing this hearing afterwards. So welcome to our final warrant public hearing. We have got a full board present, therefore a quorum. And we're going to start off with a brief moment of silence. There has been a terrible school shooting at Robb Elementary School in Texas, and with numerous children dead. And so we'll have a moment of silence. Thank you. We're going to work, because most of the public will have their annual town report to work from. We'll be starting on page, the actual town warrant itself starts on page 67. These are just business articles, the same questions that are asked every year. The questions aren't customized for this year's vote until Article B21. And so that's where we'll start. It's on page 69. And so briefly, it says, shall the Board of Selectmen be authorized to expend up to $50,000 from the first installment of the coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds, also known as the American Rescue Plan Act, or the ARPA funds, received from the federal government for the purpose of providing a one-time retroactive premium payment to employees who worked during the COVID-19 state of emergency. And I'm just going to have Joe speak to this, since the town manager kind of crafted the means of disbursement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, the total amount of ARPA funds is approximately $121,000 that the town is eligible for. It comes in two allotments. We've received the first allotment. It's in an account earning interest for us. What is on the warrant is a question about $50,000 of that first 60. And the purpose of it is for folks who worked during COVID-19 who were actually present. So if you were remote or on vacation, doesn't count. You have to be present and working with coworkers during the pandemic, or with the public, or both. It applies to folks who made $75,000 a year or less. And it is for folks pretty much across the whole gamut of employees. So it'll apply to firefighters, it'll apply to folks here in the office, public works, part-time, full-time folks who meet those qualifications. And it is retrospective, so it goes back during the time frame that this was that COVID was active.
Okay. All right. Any questions or need for clarification? All right, moving on to Article B22. Shall the town vote to join the Maine Public Employees Retirement System as a participating local district effective July 1, 2022? So A and B are the particular plans identified for the full-time police officers and firefighters. That plan was selected by this group of employees. Not on B22B, Plan AC for all other full-time employees. Again, a plan selected by the employees, and the C after it indicates that there's a cost of living adjustment after they have reached and are collecting retirement benefits. So Joe, I will again defer this to you to explain Maine PERS and maybe what currently is in place for employees, and why this is better.
Okay, Madam Chair. So currently the town offers what's called a 457B, as in Bravo, ICMA retirement plan. It's at 6%, so the town matches up to 6%. So if an employee puts in 6%, the town will put in 6%. The employee can put in more than 6%, but the town will match up to 6%. The two plans that Madam Chair talked about in Maine PERS, AC and 2C, AC, the town share of that is 10.2%. On Plan 2C, the town share of that is 11.4%. So it's a significant benefit to the employee. And it was through several discussions with the board, myself, we talked about how important it is to attract and retain employees. This is something that a lot of towns offer that the region has not offered previously. And I thank the board for putting this on the warrant this year. I think it is a good tool for, again, retention and attracting candidates to the town. And it's good for folks, aside from that, it's good for employees that are here that, will have a retirement. If they opt in, this is not a requirement for employees. They can choose to come in or not to. For certain classes of folks, they'll have to do it right away. So if they've worked here 5 years, they have to determine right away if they're going to join up or not. Folks less than 5 years have kind of an enrollment period so that they can sign up. It does require legislative approval, which is why it's on the warrant. It does require town meeting to approve this before the town can participate. So that's why this lengthy Article B22 is on the warrant.
This has affected our ability to hire in the past. Over the years, being on the board and being on hiring committees, there have been applicants with experience that have applied for a number of positions. And if this person with experience is coming from a town that has main PERS and they are collecting it and they realize we don't offer it, they immediately withdraw. Because they can't continue to pay into main PERS unless the town participates, because the town pays a share. So this has affected us in the past, not being enrolled in main PERS. Does the board have anything else to offer? Yes.
I would just expand on your point as far as it affecting us. We do have difficulty hiring and retaining police officers here. Specifically, I believe that this article, if it's passed, it could help us with hiring and retention of police officers.
That's a good point. Yes.
I just would like to point out that I've just seen this for the first time.
Okay.
But as a taxpayer in town, looking at this, one of my first questions is how much is it going to cost? I don't see anything quickly proving this that compared to what it costs us now and whatever we may have for a retirement plan, what will be the difference? I think the taxpayers would be interested to know.
Right, Joe, go ahead.
Madam Chair, excellent question. The answer is if everybody that can participate does participate, the difference would be $53,073. That's if everybody that could join did join. So the liability to the town can be $53,000. To expand on that, when we talked about that this year during the budget process, we didn't want to budget for that, not knowing, we didn't want to build that into the budget and then not have main PERS pass. So the board's intent is to use funds from the general reserve, which has just under $500,000 currently, to pay for the first year. Second year, we'll know if it passes. We'll know we'll have a better idea of how many folks are going to be in the program, and then we can budget for it in the actual budget process. So it was a cognitive decision that the board made to use general reserve funds to pay for the first year. But the answer to the gentleman's question is $53,000.
Yeah. Mark.
Is that 53,000 the total, or is that 53,000 additional over the present cost that the town's paying for retirement?
So the town already pays in 6%
Which is,
to
is
those.
that part of this 53,000 or is
Yes.
53,000 in addition?
No, 53,000 is in addition to it, so there's 6% and then there's 53,000, which is the difference. So it would cost us, could cost us, if everybody joined up, 53,000 additional.
More than it's cost.
Mhm.
So what does the 6% amount to right now?
70,885.
Okay, so the total's like 123 or 5,000.
Madam Chair, it's, 123,958.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Dennis.
A couple of questions. Do you have 100% participation now in your retirement system?
In the 457, no, Madam Chair, we do not.
So we're assuming that those people that are not currently on will probably maintain this. Is that why that's included in that figure?
Madam Chair, we're assuming, I'm assuming that with this number, this is the total liability the town can face. This is assuming that everybody joins. It probably won't be this high.
Right.
Although I am very hopeful, and I'll share this with everybody, that folks, employees, are able to enter the retirement system, at some point. I really hope that they can do that. But that is, an expression of what the total liability would be additionally.
My second
Yes.
question is, Madam Chairman, in B22A and B, it states that full-time employees who work at least 40 hours a week for 52 weeks a year. I'm assuming we're assuming that includes vacations, sick time, any time off, and holidays.
They have a right to use their benefits. So yes, so it would
Because
be,
there is some wording, I think, in the contract that deals a little bit with time not worked and time worked.
right.
So, but to consider it as a full-time employees that are paid for 52 weeks a year.
That's correct. I mean, each job description has, a person is hired under a full-time or part-time condition. And just to expand a little bit on the cost. So the reason why employees may not participate in this, or it may be a detriment to them, is because it's an additional expense to them. So you heard Joe talk about the town share. Well, the employee also has to pay in, and they're also paying into Social Security. So they really need to, some of these employees, just may not feel that they can participate, which is why we're giving them up to 5 years to opt in. Those that have been employed now for 5 years or more, they've got one and done. They've got one shot to join. If they don't join, then the ship has sailed on them of being able to participate in the main PERS program. But for those newer employees who may, be at a lower income and need more time to figure out if this is going to be financially feasible for their family, they've got up to 5 years to decide whether to opt in. So this is an expense for them as well that they have to, do their own calculations with. So that's why we can't automatically assume everyone's going to participate. Steve?
Would you take a moment to explain the buyback?
Yeah, so there is a buyback. So this is letter. This is the letter D. Joe, do you want to go ahead and
I'm
touch on
happy
this?
to, Madam Chair. Really, there's no cost to the town for buyback, so employees can buy back, and this is a board decision that they made, which I, again, am very thankful for, that allows all employees to buy back all of their years of service with the town. So at their own cost, so they need to make their own arrangements with Maine Purse to figure out how they're going to finance that, how they're going to pay for it. But the town, doesn't pay for any portion of this. But the town has elected to let them buy, or the board has put on the warrant article to let employees buy any and all prior service with the town.
And that will be a discussion. So Maine PERS determines how much it's going to cost them to buy back per year. And that's between Maine PERS and the employee. the town has no involvement. Thank you, Steve, for pointing that out. Go ahead.
The reason I bring it up, Dennis, is so that you understand if somebody has been employed by the town here for X amount of years and they're coming close to retirement, the likelihood of them looking to buy back or participate may not be as attractive as if you're, so the notion of $53,000 is if everybody buys it. The reality may be something different. Thank you.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, maybe there's some people who have a different place to put their money that they invest and earn more money and they can choose to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
That was what we hoped for.
And so, yes, Sam, that's the reason we didn't attach a monetary amount to this, is because who knows who is going to participate. How many, Joe, I'm putting you on the spot, I don't mean to, how many employees currently participate in the 457 match?
I don't know off the top of my head.
That's okay. I
I
didn't,
don't have a specific.
yeah, no, that's, and I don't want you to guess, so.
I would say it's funny, I don't guess.
Yeah,
It's well utilized, I'll say that.
Okay.
But I don't believe it's 100% participation rate.
Okay. Any other questions on Article B22? All right. Moving on to page 70, we've got Article B23, and I will turn this article over to the fire department. And I'll just read it for the sake of consistency. Shall the town authorize the Board of Selectmen and town manager to take any actions and execute any documents necessary to enter a tax-exempt lease purchase agreement for the purchase of a pumper truck at the total cost not to exceed $750,000 with a term not to exceed 7 years, reserving in the Board of Selectmen the discretion and authority to set further terms of said agreement. So this is a petitioned article. This isn't a Board of Selectmen article. And so I'll turn this over to the fire department.
Madam Chair, I can answer a couple of questions that have
Okay.
come up or in the last board meeting. So there was a question about is the $750,000 the total? And I had sent a memo out on Friday and had a weekend to think about it. And today I connected with the town's attorney on this. And I reached out Friday, but heard back today. In keeping with how the town has approached these type of things in the past, the $750 is the sticker price, and then the cost of financing is in addition to that. So it would be $750 plus the cost of financing, and that will be spread out over the term of the lease purchase, which is not to exceed 7 years. So it would be spread out at interest attitude, and then spread out over 7 years. That was the first question. Second question that was in the last board meeting was, is it legal? And the answer to that question is yes, it is. Kristen confirmed that with me today. So those are two kind of outstanding questions that I wanted to have an opportunity to answer before we got too far into the conversation tonight.
Yeah, Shelley?
So is it also that we are required to do a lease? We can't do any of our normal searching for that?
Correct, Madam Chair. The way the article is written, it says lease purchase. So the town would have to investigate what would be the best lease purchase arrangement, the best financing we can get on that. So we're Chief and I are not saying, although we used Pierce's example to kind of get the conversation started during the budget process, we're by no means saying we have to take that off. We could explore and find out what the best offer was.
So the lease can't be then for 7 years and 1 month, which is what the actual lease is for.
The term says not to exceed 7 years, so I would say 7 years or less. Yeah. But again, the lease that was shared, I don't intend to split hairs, but that was an example to get the conversation going. I'm not saying we have to use that. Chief and I am not saying we have to use that. particular example.
I think what makes this different is the fact that we're not the only ones paying for it. So in order, so we've got the town, in the past, it's been discussed, so we enter into lease purchases and it's our expense, it's the town's expense. Yet we're looking at, the plantations and the county who need to budget as well, and they need real numbers. So, which is why the total cost not to exceed is the total cost, is how I am, for the sake of our agreements and our contracts with the plantations and the counties, we can't float them an estimated number. They need to budget a real number. And the explanation on page 79 for B23 is a bit misleading as well. Because if we're going to deal with the only real number we were provided with, so on page 79, you got the explanation for Article B23. The total cost with the leasing example we were given is actually $867.66. Not $747,663. It's $870,867.66, which equals, so 49% equals $60,960 a year for Rangeley, not $43,908. That's based on the example we were given. So Article B23 was presented to the select board as a draft. The reason we didn't agree to put it on this warrant article is because we didn't feel we had enough information. And this is a good example of not having enough information. This shouldn't even be in this town report, because this explanation of Article B23 isn't a real number, our breakdown. So that was my concern with the wording, and that's one of the reasons why the board discusses finances and wording and whatnot, is because of ambiguity like this in a draft warrant that was presented to the board, because it leaves a lot open to interpretation. So that's my feedback in the real numbers, and the fact that we can't comparison shop as well. We've always, our purchasing policy, okay. We typically will weigh out how much, it's going to cost to borrow as opposed to lease, and find the best possible, most economical approach for, and bring it to the public. It's like, all right, we've done our due diligence. This is what we think is the best deal, which is why the police cruiser that we were, presented with, we decided to, tell the chief to buy something new, because it was, had the warranty, and it was less expensive than the used one he was looking at. It's due diligence. It's what we're supposed to do.
Can I add something, please?
I've got the board hands up. Just a second.
Okay.
Ethan, go ahead.
Question for Joe. When you ran this by the town attorney, and she said that it was a legal article, did she find any ambiguity in this that Cindy's discussing? And I see what Cindy's point, what it is, but did the town attorney find this to be an ambiguous petition article? Because if she said it was perfectly legal, I'm just trying to sort this out, then I would assume she found no ambiguity in this statement, to what Cindy's talking about, even though I know exactly what Cindy's talking about.
So it was legal, is legal in the sense that it was, right, a petition
Okay.
article.
That's its legality.
I wasn't. That's cool.
It's legal, in terms of the purchasing policy, what we would be reviewing, and I totally pick up, you know, I understand, and I understand where we're at with this. The person, under the purchasing policy, we would be looking at the lease financing as an item that we were purchasing, so to speak, so we'll be using that policy, not only for the truck, but the financing that is attached to it. It would prevent us from looking at just using cash, because it does say lease purchase. So that's the only thing that you know, is a little complicates it a little is this issue, but you can use a purchasing policy to buy financing, to buy a fire truck. So lease purchase fits under that policy.
Just to qualify, Ethan, I'm not sure if the attorney realized that it wasn't just the town paying for this, that this is actually a bill that goes to the plantations as well, and why real numbers would have been nice to present. Shelley, you had your hand up, and then Steve.
Okay, so I just had a question in regards to, we were presented with a letter with regards to the repairs on engine 3. Northeast fire apparatus would be at the town on May 4th to address those concerns, and they will draft a letter at that point, and we have not seen that yet.
Madam Chair, it actually came in today. She handed out copies to them. I do have copies. Yeah. And to Chief's credit, I've been after him for this for the last couple of weeks. And he's been after Northeast to prepare it. So dig him in, I know that the timing is. We have a long time to look at it.
Did you have anything else, Shelley, before I go to Steve?
So the other thing is, that with the letter that was presented, that I think it's important for the public to know that we purchased engine 3 in 2016, and we've had that for 6 years, and we have put a total of 9,487 miles on it.
Anything else at this point, Shelley? Steve?
A couple of things, and I'd like to respond to Shelley after, if I might. Article B23 is a duly authorized legal petition. And it clearly states that they are not to exceed $750,000. If there was a mistake in the writing of the article not to include the financing, I'm sorry. This is $750,000, not to go beyond 7 years. It is a legal petition, and we can talk till we're blue in the face, but this is what the town is going to vote on. If the description on page 79 is inaccurate, okay, then that's up to us to explain the inaccuracies. All right,
Well, it's not up to the board.
it's up to us right now in this public hearing to explain on page 79 what Article B23, page 4 of the warrant, Friends of Fire Rescue. If this is inaccurate, that's what we'd explain tonight. To debate the legality of this petition, we're wasting our time and their time, because it is a legal petition. I asked that question at the last meeting, and I asked Mr. Marquis to let me finish that statement, because this is what we're voting on, not our debate whether we think it's right, wrong, or indifferent. And if I may respond.
Sure.
I don't think in the future that we should, first of all, we should all counsel ourselves that mileage on a fire truck is irrelevant. It's the question of years and the degree of use. If they went 15 times to a house across the street from the fire department, that's not judging its use. It's not germane to the value of a fire truck. We have purchased trucks with 47,000 miles, help me out, Dennis, that were 25 years old.
Right.
They were good for us because they weren't gonna see extra mileage. I just don't wanna fall into the trap of looking at, like you and I would, if we went to buy a vehicle, got 150 grand on it, we might go, it's got 40,000 miles, we might buy it. You follow what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm not picking on you or anybody else, but I don't think that that is a barometer by which we should use to judge value of a fire truck. It is in police and it is in municipal vehicles, but I don't believe a fire truck. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm gonna go to Rebecca and then Mark.
I just want to clarify a few things. In regards to the interest and the amount that's in the warrant article, you do not include interest in the warrant articles. You only put in the principal. When you're putting in the warrant for a bond, a loan, construction loan, there's a treasurer's statement that's done, and the treasurer's statement shows an estimated interest. But because this is a lease purchase, that is not necessary as far as the treasurer's statement. But you never put in the interest in the warrant article. As far as the other towns knowing and the counties and it being a legal warrant article, the public safety building, that warrant article only included the principal and there was nothing mentioned about the plantations.
Well, we can't, I'm sorry.
Shelley had her hand up first and then
Sure,
I'll go to
sure.
you.
I think the question is not sure how to handle where it was a petition versus our regular active business. That is what the questions have been about. It hasn't been about how we actually do our part. It's a question about how we handle a petition where this hasn't been done before. That's what that's about. And we need to make sure, if you have a petition, does it have to be exactly what's on the petition? And that's the question that I said. So if that's the case, we don't have a chance to put it out to bid to find out if someone's gonna offer a better rate. We don't have, and it has to be for 7 years. So the agreement that we have that was presented to us is it can't be done because it's 7 years and 1 month where that's due. So that's all I want to clarify, because I want to make sure that it can be voted on because we have all the information that we have going forward. I'm not saying anything about the petition. I'm just saying, I want to make sure that, because it's my fiduciary, I'm going to use yours, duty to make sure that we're representing what we're supposed to be representing.
Steve.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Mark, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just curious about the statement that was made about the town's attorney legal opinion was that the total cost of $750,000 didn't necessarily mean the total cost, like most people would think that there's other costs on top of that. Is that a written opinion based on, like Joe referenced, that we kind of set precedents with the way we did other things? Is that a written opinion with references to us acting that way in the past? Claiming something was a total cost, but then there was another 100 and some thousand. And
I think typically like purchase price has been what has been identified, total cost is the total cost. Purchase price is the purchase price. And so I think that's, Kristen did state that this was a draft, she did. This was not a final, and this was not she was asked to prepare a draft, not by the Board of Selectmen. We didn't ask for it, but it was something that was provided to the Board of Selectmen for consideration. And Kristen clearly states this was a draft for discussion. So that she did indicate, but Mark, I don't even know if I've answered your question.
I'm just wondering if the opinion is it in writing? Is it that somebody could get a copy of and read and see if they
I'll
agree with
have to defer to Joe. I don't.
I'd be happy to read it.
Give me a moment.
Okay, sure.
But it's a draft opinion, it's not a final opinion.
It was. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe, you asked whether the article printed below sets a cap of $750,000 on the total purchase price plus, underline plus, on the lease payments. My interpretation and intention when I drafted it, as a very rough draft at the time, as the chair alluded to, was that the sales price of the pumper truck was not to exceed $750,000, and interest and fees on top of that would be left in the selectman's discretion in negotiating the terms. Of course, the amount of the total lease payments must be accounted for elsewhere in the budget. And it would be in the same place in the budget, but it would have to be accounted for. So, yes, Madam Chair, it is in writing, and that's what it is, what it states.
Can I also add?
Yes, go ahead, Rebecca.
So I'm looking at the warrant articles for both the road loans. And it says a sum not to exceed $2,100,000. The other one is on behalf of the town, the sum not to exceed $3 million. So they don't include the interest, and it says not to exceed, so. And those were-
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Rebecca. But it's not an item we're purchasing. You know, road loans, the costs change from year to year. Yeah, we're gonna borrow up to, you know, a certain amount that we may or may not fully use within a certain period of time. It's a good point. But it's not an item that we can comparison shop for and get a definite, you know.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
you actually, I disagree, Cindy. I think you agreed with Rebecca, rightfully so, but we will be purchasing potentially within that framework.
Mhm.
And we negotiate within that framework, knowing what our budget amount is. So that being said, I think that this, it's cleared up the definition in my mind. It hasn't clouded it more. To me, I was gonna say before, you go to 750, you negotiate, you know what you're working up towards. But the examples say that I'm wrong, so. Interest and financing fees on top of that is a standard practice. I mean, you must have seen this in the past as well. Yeah, I know that will look like,
I've never questioned the legitimacy of the petition either. I'm full on, it was a legal petition.
I as well, yeah.
I am very disappointed in the department heads for handling it the way it was done. We never said no to this truck. We asked for more information, and the fact that we didn't get it is disconcerting and disheartening. And then they backdoored us.
So, yes, Sam.
As a simple taxpayer, when I look at this warrant item and it says $750,000, it doesn't reference that there's another $100,000 in interest that's involved with it. I feel like I'm just, when I read this, I'm in the ballot box and I'm going to check off a number, and I walk out and find out it's going to be another $100,000 on top of the $750 that was on that warrant article. I feel deceived as a taxpayer.
And if this summary is correct, we said not yet. We said, let's continue to discuss, give us more information. And then the petition went out. Probably, would this be more appropriate at a selectmen's meeting? Okay.
It will be, Madam Chair, and that was my intent with it, was to include it in your agenda, but I wanted you to have it tonight. So
Thank you.
can
Okay.
Look at it. After the meeting.
That's great.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
To Sam's point, Mr. Spalding's point, it's correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but it's not an extra $100,000 to the town of Rangeley. It's an extra $100,000 over Rangeley, the plantations, 2 counties, and McGallo.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
49% of that $100,000 is Rangeley's responsibility.
Still feel the same.
No argument, just wanted you to, I didn't want you to leave you thinking it was $100K.
Yeah, Shelley.
It's not McGalloway itself, it's under Oxford County.
We cover 22 towns and townships, McGalloway is not one of them, but we do cover towns in Oxford and Franklin County.
Is
Go ahead, Steve.
Galloway paying a separate fee to us?
That is Lincoln Plantation.
Lincoln?
Plantation.
Okay, but I'm sorry, Galloway was the wrong
That's
terminology.
right, because it wasn't, it actually wasn't in the dollar amount that they're contributing.
It's my ubiquitous term for the valley.
Township D, we also cover Davidstown, Adamstown,
Stetson,
Stetson.
thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Shelley.
So I have a question then, is it Rangeley Plantation, Dallas Plantation, Sandy River Plantation, Franklin County, Oxford County, is there more?
In Franklin and Oxford County, there's unorganized townships, so it amounts to,
Yep.
6 here, 4 there.
Right.
But it does add up to 22 towns and townships and just over 650 square miles.
You have another question? Go ahead, Shelley.
I was just gonna add to Sam's comment about the interest. And a lot of times what happens is that, like, for this, they're asking you to vote for that price. The interest and things like that are usually put out to bid through our process when we do go to purchase it. So that's where those terms are different. And like for the construction loans that we have out there, it was a fixed rate for a certain amount of time. The interest was all depending on when the funds were drawn. So that couldn't really be disclosed as a full amount of what the cost could be throughout the terms of those 2 loans. So, and the ones that are adjustable, those rates would change each year or whatever the note calls for. So, and we do have that information when it comes up to bid, and we do present that in our selectmen's meetings. So that's where you would find that information. But a lot of times, in order for us to spend these big bucks, it's to let you know, as a taxpayer, we're looking at the dollar amount, and then we'll be presented with terms and stuff like that going forward. I just, that helps.
All right. Anything else? Yes, Marie.
What happens with the old fire truck if we buy a new one?
Very good question, Madam Chair. The plan, if it passes, would be to trade that in to whoever, sold the town the new one. That'd be part of the deal, would be trade that one in.
Marie's all set. So Dennis, in the past, you said that there were 2 new fire trucks purchased in the history of the fire department. Is 2 brand new, you said it in the past?
2 new ones.
2 new ones. So how have those lasted? Why don't you tell us about those?
How they lasted?
Yeah,
Well, one's a 2007, the other one's a 2008. The 2008 was purchased in 2008, the 2007 was purchased in 2009. And the reason for that is because they were commercial cabs, and just about 2008, the international auto truck companies under the Clean Air Act, had to come through with a exhaust regeneration system, which basically means that you have to put this VDF fluid, it's like antifreeze fluid, you dumped it into the system, and that processes the exhaust and make it emissions lower. And so what it does is it robs a lot of horsepower off the engine. So at that time, a lot of companies were trying to gather all these 2007 trucks that they could get. And at the time we went to buy a truck in 2009, E1 in Florida said that they had 5 commercial chassis that were 2007s that they had bought that were sitting on their lot, and they were selling them. And there were the non-exhaust recirculation problem, because when that system first came out, there was a bunch of problems with it. And so we ended up purchasing a brand new truck that was actually 2 years old, but it had 0 miles on it, didn't even have a body on it. And those 2 trucks, they're commercial cab trucks. We've had some electrical wiring problems with them. Like you do any fire truck, they're a different brand, they're E1. We did buy them brand new. But they're serving us well now. In fact, one of them up here is goes out about every time we have a call. And the other one that's down in the closet is a tanker truck, which is basically hauls 3,000 gallons of water. This one up here doesn't. This one's more of a, it's an all-wheel drive truck, and it's more of a initial attack truck, which gets to the scene, gets a hold of it, whatnot. And then the other truck comes along and supplies that with water. But we've had good luck with those 2, reasonably good luck with them. And they are, well, 2008. They're a few years old, but they seem to be holding up pretty good. We haven't had, to my knowledge, we haven't had any major repairs. They do have full poly tanks, and the poly tanks have lifetime. And we take very good care of our truck. We'd be able to do that better if we had town mechanic, but apparently don't.
That would be nice.
It would be nice.
We're trying that, Sarah.
Yeah,
Main purse will help.
yes, it will. That's for sure.
Personally,
Yes.
I think that if you read that warrant article, you have flexibility.
And that's been our question, you know, is because our purchasing policy gives us all kind of flexibility, but this doesn't. You know, this is a lease purchase,
If you
not,
read it correctly, it gives you flexibility.
yeah, we flush that out. All right, are there any other questions or comments? The remainder of page 70, we've got the reserve, Article C1 is, 180,000 in reserve requests, and they're all itemized out. Those correspond with the capital plan, purchase plan that each department has. Article C2 is the same, reads the same every year regarding expending monies from reserve accounts. Capital equipment is a $7,000 request, and then the usual $5,000 for the Rangeley Health Ride, which used to be called the RAT van. So now we're moving into the department expenses, and so we're going to shift. So on page 71, that correlates to what begins on page 82. You'll see these colored charts, all right, that just show, they're color coded. Red is increase, green is decrease, and blue is no change. And so we're just going to hit the highlights. I think Joe, what is before we start with this? Is it a 2.88% increase in the budget this year?
It's around that last year. Hang on, let me get the exact number. 2.28.
2.28. Okay, so we're at this point with the With the budget as presented, it's, the municipal budget increase is 2.28%. So I don't think we had disclosed that publicly before. So now everyone knows. So we're just going to go around the room, briefly hit the highlights. So with selectmen, I'll start, then we'll go to Shelley. The selectmen is down 5.98% from last year. There was a cut in our legal bill for this year, also a cut in FICA. We didn't need to collect as much as we did last year. So we are minus 5.98%. Shelley?
So in administration, there is a increase this year and of 2.02. And the increase includes the salary and wages, the FICA and Medicare and health insurance, and then also the MMA dues increase.
Ethna, you have assessing.
0.55% increase in the assessing, mostly from the telephone, and the increase in the assessing contract.
Thank you. Steve, you've got finance?
Finance, we have an increase of 1.31%. You'll find the increase in FICA, office, computer, telephone. That's it. Excuse me, that's a decrease. The increase is in salaries and wages, pardon me. And the audit software and payroll processing of 26,496. That increases, and also it's a difference of $1,960 previous year.
Thank you, Steve. Ethan, you have planning.
Planning budget this year is decrease of 16.68%. Find those decreases in mileage, office and computer supplies, as well as AdCog dues and sold services.
For town office building, so just a note to the public. So when we talk about the salary and FICA increases, we have worked in a 3% increase in non-union wages. And so of course, you know, that's going to be a constant throughout, as it is every year when we increase wages. For town office building, there is an increase in 47.26%. It's a total increase of $24,541, and pretty much, I mean, the website software and janitorial services was the biggest jump. We had to go out to bid again for janitorial services, and that we had one response, and it was just it's a large increase from our prior janitorial services contract. And then, you know, building computers and software, telephone, and then office and cleaning supplies and equipment rental. So increase in town office building. Shelley?
So for the public safety building, there was a decrease of $1,469. So that put it as a negative 1.76%.
Town clerk?
The town clerk's budget is down 16.28%, or negative $12,583. Those decreases can be seen in the FICA, the office computer, the telephone, and the internet.
Steve, property and casualty insurance?
Property casualty insurance has a 6.47 increase. Differences of $3,578. The increase is given to us. We don't have any choice. We pay it. That's the number.
Pretty much. Ethan's got the newbie tax increment financing.
This one's difficult, but you'll notice that there's no increase, decrease, or no change in the tax incremental financing, also known as TIF, because we are in our inaugural run.
That's right. For fire rescue, looking at an increase of 1%, which is $2,848. Most departments, no change, but you know, the salary wage increase, FICA, and office computer health insurance. And the one thing that was taken out of all of these departments were the computer services and repairs. So what used to be, it's no longer even a category, which accounts for some of the changes, but it's, we now have the computer as a standalone expense.
So is that like an IT account or IT department?
Yeah, so basically, we contract with Exponet out of Wilton, and they take care of any IT needs. They've got our cloud-based services, email, and if there's any issues in whatever department, they are called, and instead of each department having their own line item for these expenses, they've been removed from the departments and put into one location, which is it under selectmen?
Madam Chair, it's under general government buildings.
Okay.
You can keep track of that.
25.
Yeah.
I mean, not too far, 2502.
All right, Shelley's got police department.
So the overall, there is an increase, and that's 16.94% with a total amount of $48,851. And the increases are with the wages, salary, the FICA, Medicare, health insurance, 457 match, income protection, workers' comp, and the increase in the mileage, the increase in the office computer, postage, operating, safety, uniform, minor equipment, hearing tests, and then vehicles equipment.
That's police department. Going on to animal control, Edna.
There's an increase of 2.09% or $117. It's an increase in the stipend and all of the affiliated cost centers with a stipend increase.
Health officer, we have a $81 increase. It's the stipend that increased a little bit. Actually, it didn't. Why does that illustrate that it does? Oh, I see, okay, it does, yeah. FICA, $210, for a total of $81 total increase.
Ethan.
Best budget has 6.3%. I'm confused.
Yeah, you're right, 6.03% increase.
But I don't really have any literature for it, but it's truly because the contract services went up.
Right. Yes, go ahead, Joe.
Madam Chair, it's primarily due to wages and training at North Star. With turnover because of COVID, it's primarily wages and training.
Mark.
Back to the police department, on the fringe benefit, it went from
Move back to where?
police department. They didn't see my hand when I was up.
Oh, sorry,
Oh.
it's a public hearing.
Huh?
It's a public hearing. It's for the public to
So,
ask
on the fringe
questions.
benefits, it went from 54,000 to 95,000. In the explanation, it says the difference in fringe benefits is due to the reduction in compensation by the select board. I find that confusing. Could you explain that to me?
Yeah, I can't explain that either.
Madam Chair, there's probably a typo or carryover from some other
Okay,
place. The increase is primarily for the officer that did, an officer that did not take health insurance. Was not in the previous budget, is now in this budget. That makes up.
It's now taking health insurance.
It's budgeted or programmed for that person to take it if we can hire them.
Okay,
That explains the increase.
okay,
I
thank you.
apologize for the note.
no, that's. Yes, Dennis.
In light of what you just spoke of about the IT and the computer stuff, I noticed that computer still shows in all these lines, in all these departments.
So,
They haven't been taken out. Does that mean that there is some money still in there for computer?
well, if a department needs a computer, that's different.
That comes out of their department, not out of
Yes,
the IT.
it's not IT.
Correct.
Yeah,
There are two groups, man. There's the equipment, which is one line, and then there's the maintenance, or the service agreement, which is a
So
separate.
all these software agreements and costs and stuff like that are taken out, put together, and then And
not
the,
necessarily software.
the hardware stuff is stays separate.
Essentially, that's correct, not entirely, so Trio is got its own home in a separate place. Trio is it's got its own home, it's not in that $10,000 that's budgeted this year for services. If that makes sense.
Because you're getting all the computers this year, right?
No, we're not getting all new computers this year, no, there's a rotation, so if a department were to buy a computer that would be programmed into their budget, I don't remember the line off the top of my head. But it would come out of that department, but the service on equipment would come out of that 2502 that I mentioned earlier. Yep.
John?
And I believe some of the computers that we're taking that out of general funds. General funds or the other money?
Madam Chair, it wouldn't be general fund, it would be specific reserve accounts that the board selected. And I've actually, I know she's listening, I've got a list of items that we're familiar with, the reserve stuff, reserve expenses that the board has been talking about recently. And that's on the list, it's there, so we've accounted for that there in the reserve accounts. So when we buy the computer, the transfer station is one example of that, the board do that in the reserve account.
All right, fire hydrants. This is a contract service that's set by the Rangeley Water District. It increased 2.5% or $3,660. It's renewed every year.
Highway. The highway has an increased budget of 39.31% and an amount of $284,379. The increases include wages and salary and the benefits. And it also has the office item, the cleaning uniforms, the telephones. There was an increase in telephone, electricity, street lights, heating, fuel, water, sewer. Buildings was also an increase, vehicles, equipment, radios, routine, road maintenance, the advertising line item. And also the large amount is due to the interest due to the road loan. And then the principal and the interest for that loan, because our principal and interest payments begin this year.
Ethna?
Sewer department has a 1.4% increase. That is in the salary and wages, FICA, Medicare, the mileage, as well as telephone, electricity, and heating fuel. And the repair and maintenance line.
Steve's got solid waste transfer.
Solid waste and transfer station have an increase of 12.52%. The good news is advertising stayed the same at $150. The better news is we went down by $1,000 in office, computer, and postage, etc. We're up in wages. We're up in FICA, which is associated with that. Mileage and training is up. Telephone, building, vehicles and equipment, septic, sludge, road maintenance, testing, monitoring, and tipping fees. Tipping fees went up quite a bit, as you can see.
Ethan.
The airport budget has a decrease of 0.37%. Decrease in mileage, office postage, operating diesel line equipment. In the building, equipment, runway, and the beacon lighting. Also the BOS system, which is great to me, but it's the Stanwick avionics quarterly inspections and janitorial services have all gone down, as well as the stormwater permit.
Parks and Recreation, an increase of 6.41% or $14,383. And the areas of increase are the wages, the associated benefits, Supplies went up 4,000, and a couple of decreases with the debt interest and the anticipated utilities expenses.
Cemetery, the overall budget is down from previous is by $332, a negative 0.64.
Public Services Director, there's an increase of 2.76%. Can be seen in the salary and associated FICA and Medicare. There's also mileage, training fees and subscriptions, and operating supplies.
Ranger Comfort Stations. We are up incredible amount of money, $1,280, mostly attributed to heating, electricity, water and sewer, testing, monitoring, and janitorial services. Maintenance on the building stays solid at 2,000, as does operating supplies at 1,500. I feel like I'm announcing a baseball game. We're solid in these two categories, ladies and gentlemen, and up to the plate.
Go ahead, Ethan.
In regards to the Aquatic Comfort Station, the increases in contract services, which is janitorial services, as previously stated. In other departments, we hired a new person for that, and so it's a 5.78% increase, total $875.
Moving on to culture, we have an increase of 112.03%, or $13,500. The biggest is the increase from $550 for the current year up to $10,550, because we want to put $10,000 into the Veterans Monument. And then the fireworks also is an increase of $10,000 because we had a carryover from prior year. We didn't really need to raise fireworks last year because we had some cancellation the prior year of fireworks, so we just carried that amount forward. So $13,500 increase.
General assistance, this remains at budgeting for 2,000, the same as it has in years past. No increase, no decrease, it stays the same.
And with the donations, you folks can just read through. These donations are petitioned. They are, itemized on starting on page 73, 74, and end on page 75. And the individual organizations have requested those amounts. Anything over $5,000 is by petition. And capital purchases, I guess Ethna would be kind of the last thing to comment on.
I mean, I don't get to say 0% on animals.
Well, I mean,
I'm kidding with you.
so.
Capital purchases figures aren't a true picture of capital purchases,
Right,
so I would rather not comment on it.
yeah. Yeah, it's, the capital purchases just fluctuate greatly. Maybe Joe can speak to this. From year to year, depending on what the individual departments have in their, in their budgets. So that there's great fluctuation, as Ethna said. And so going back to the town meeting warrant, and with going through, we finished the expense articles. So next up is the revenue budget article, RV1, at the bottom of page 75. Shall the town vote to appropriate funds from non-property tax revenues for the approved articles in EX1 through DN21. There is an inclusion of 275,000 from the unassigned fund balance. The estimated revenues are at 1,063,675. And if this is a really important figure, because this is what carries over to the assessor's calculation sheet for the mill rate, and if we could just have an explanation as to how how the estimated revenues figure is calculated. Ethan.
Is that a typo in the estimated revenue slide? Oh, 1 million.
Yes, it
Such and
is.
such.
It's 1 million.
Oh, okay, the dots look funny. It looked like a, never mind.
It does. You're right.
Madam Chair, I would invite the treasurer being with us tonight to speak about this.
Okay.
Rebecca?
All right, I forgot the sheet that Joe gave you, but I can go through this. So, our revenues, can change from year to year. For an example, this year, I have noticed that our, vehicle excise is not as high as it's been in the past. So things like that can, have an effect on our estimated revenue. So we look at boat excise. If taxes are not paid on time, we get interest for taxes. We get fees for to reimburse us for postage, for filing at the registry. We also have reimbursements. We have tree growth reimbursement, veterans reimbursement, state park share. Couple of the things that are not in the revenue that you don't see that is actually incorporated into the assessor's part of it is like revenue sharing, homestead reimbursement. Those are things that are done in the mill rate calculation. Let's see what else. We have our sewer commitment, interest on our checking account. Notary fees, we get charged for photocopies, planning. Our building permits have greatly increased in the last couple of years, so that has been fantastic. Rental income, we get paid for the public safety building. North Star pays rent for their use of the public safety building. Town clerk, business fees, the fire rescue. So as Cindy had mentioned earlier that Sandy River, Rangeley Plantation, Dallas Plantation, Franklin County, and Oxford County all pay a portion for fire services. They pay a portion of the budget for that department. Let's see what else here. They're major ones. Sanitary sewer. So we get, we charge for septic sludge, and solid waste is a big one. We, the voucher fees, the recycle revenue, and then the airport with hangar leases and things like that. And then like Cindy had mentioned, the $275,000 that we are using from the undesignated fund balance. We have an undesignated fund balance policy that requires that we keep 2 to 3 months operating expense in it. This year, we have, I don't have that number in front of me, and I think Joe, is it?
It's 2 million.
I'm trying to zoom in. I don't have my glasses either.
It's 2 million.
Oh, fund balance.
566.
Yeah, $2.5 million, which is over the 3 months operating expense, which allows us to use $275,000 of that to help reduce the taxes.
And that $2,566,866 is actually the unassigned, this is from our audit. And our current audit on page 9, it is the unassigned fund balance from that year. I'm surprised there's not more to pull forward. I guess, you know, the audit also had indicated that, let's see, let me just find the right page. Bear with me a moment. On page 11 in the audit, it indicates that the government operate, that we've got 4 months worth of government operations that are in, that are also included in the unassigned fund balance. And as Rebecca mentioned, yeah, the fund balance does say recommend 2 to 3. So just surprised that that amount isn't more. I guess I'd, just be helpful to have a breakdown of that. So I know that breakdown can't be provided now. I mean, but it's just was very, very helpful having the audit, passed out to us recently, and just to see the numbers, and the explanation's been very helpful. But it just with the that $2.5 million amount, I think last year we actually were given a little summary sheet. Yeah, we provide a little summary sheet, so perhaps we could. Last year it was dated 4/16/2021, and so it'd just be helpful to see those numbers, since the purpose of the fund balance policy is so the town doesn't hold on to too much undesignated funds, so they have to be raised through taxation. Any questions? Shelley?
So I was also looking at the audit in regards to that, and I thought the 275 also would have been higher. On page 10, it says the general fund actual revenues exceeded budgeted amounts by $447,462. This was a result of all revenues being received in excess of budgeted amounts.
So this is just an ongoing discussion, Joe, I guess, because this, as this article indicates, it has an asterisk. So when you see an asterisk, turn to page 70, beginning on page 78 for an explanation. And so on RV1, it's on page, the explanation's on page 81, and that, this one is a difficult number to provide an exact amount when the warrant's presented. So, but I would just just ask if we could kind of look at that a little bit.
Okay, we'll work on that.
It's right. Any other questions or comments on the revenue budget article? Okay, I believe we have covered everything. Yes, Mark.
Someone asked me about where we take the registration fees for trucks and automobiles and dedicate those to the highway department, and also the snowmobile registration fees and give those to the snowmobile club. Are those they were wondering if those numbers are quantified someplace where they were just curious how much that is, if they were like the snowmobile club and the donation thing, they gave them 50,000. How much more are they giving, through that, and with the road loan that we have and the highway budget, how much more is added to that from these registration fees? And I didn't know where to tell them to look for that information.
Rebecca, you want to answer that one? Do you have a question?
I only heard bits and pieces of it. It's hard to hear him. I did hear something about the snowmobile club. What extra do they get on top of the 50,000? Every year it's averages around anywhere between, I would say, $1,600 to $1,800 for the registration.
And how much money comes in through excise for highway?
I don't have that number in front of me, but all excise goes into a fund, a separate fund account to pay for the road loans. None of it is included in the revenue.
Right, but the question was, where would somebody look to find that information?
We can generate a report for the board for your next meeting.
Okay,
We'll generate a report for you.
all right. That's great.
Yeah, the answer to the question is if right now it's not posted on the website, to my knowledge, if somebody wants to know, the next couple of days, they can call the office, we can get that. But what we'll do is get you a report for your next meeting. And if you would like that to be, posted on the website, I will be happy to do that.
Any other questions or comments? I will close the public hearing and thank you, Joe. Thank you, Rebecca, for your help today. Tracy, thank you. And I'd like to also thank those that are here from the fire department. We've got Chief Bacon and Dennis and Sammy Spalding here, who's able to attend as well. Mark, thank you again. And the public hearing is closed.
Thank you.